Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of The Quiet Family, a Korean comedy from 1998 that was Ji-woon Kim's feature film debut as a director. And Ji-woon Kim is most well known for movies like A Tale of Two Sisters, A Bittersweet Life, The Good, the Bad, the Weird, and I Saw the Devil. And this film, A Quiet Family, would actually later be remade by Japanese director Takashi Miike into the film Happiness of the Katakuris. So it's always interesting to go back in time and see how some of these big name directors got started, and that's what we're doing today with Kim. So this film has the following plot synopsis here. We have an extended family has moved from the city, presumably Seoul, to live in a large house out in the mountains, which they convert into a lodge for hikers, consisting of a middle-aged father, mother, a younger brother, played by Min-sik Choi, and their adult children, one of whom is played by Kang-ho Song. They suffer a string of misfortunes as various patrons come to stay, but end up dying under bizarre circumstances. So all these people that they start bringing into their lodge, they inexplicably begin dying from a variety of different things. Now the film opens with a pretty catchy song as the camera kind of glides through the lodge, gives you a little tour. It's an energetic and upbeat credit sequence. Now, I think the comedy in this film works for a number of reasons. First of all, if you're a longtime fan of Korean cinema, you will get a kick out of seeing Kang-ho Song and Min-sik Choi together in a comedy. It's definitely a treat. They play characters with quite different personalities here. Song is, I'd say, slightly perverted in this film. He's constantly listening in on what's going on in the rooms, especially if there's couples in there doing the deed. And then Choi calls him out on it at various points as well. There are some amusing moments between the two. And Choi is known mostly for his more serious roles, like Old Boy and stuff like that. So it's actually quite refreshing to see him goof around in this comedy. The young actress Ho Kyung-ko is also really good in this. I like her mannerisms, how she reacts to things in this movie. I looked up her filmography, but she left the film industry at a pretty young age, which is kind of a shame. The fact that the comedy is essentially a form of black humor also gives The Quiet Family a distinctive element. Much of the humor in this movie comes from this family's response to these unfortunate deaths that keep occurring to their patrons, which is, and really, they decide very early on, hey, we need to just hide the bodies and keep rolling here. You know what I mean? Just hide their dead bodies, just cover it up, and because if anybody even hears about this, they could investigate and shut down our business, even if it's not our fault, and even if they find out these deaths were just accidents. Who's going to want to come to a lodge where people keep dying? So they're like, okay, we got to cover this up. And financially speaking, they're kind of desperate. They're willing to do absurd things to keep the revenues coming in. And there are even a few scenes early on where they don't get a customer that are quite funny. I do like the humorous interaction between the family members. It's a nice mix of them kind of getting on each other's nerves and having some enjoyable moments after their business improves. And there are some good little bits of dialogue in this. There's one scene where it's a very quick exchange, but they talk about how a beautiful woman could possibly be related to an uglier man. So that was pretty funny. And then some scenes do not turn out like you would expect them to, which adds for some humor. I won't give any spoilers, but there's a scene where a guy is by a fire in the woods. They build a little fireplace, and he's trying to woo a girl in the woods. And the series of events that transpire from that moment for the next 15 minutes after that is pretty amusing. Things just kind of spiral out of control in this film, which is pretty entertaining. The sheer improbability of some of these things is amusing in and of itself. Now, in terms of tone, there is a slight horror slant to this. I did not review this film in my Asian horror playlist, but after rewatching it, I probably could have, because there's just enough of a horror slant to consider it kind of a comedy horror film. There are a few atmospheric shots at night. There's a crazy old lady near the beginning. She believes there's something in the house, and she warns them of it. There's some odd, creepy moments that turn out not to be supernatural. So you're kind of wondering at the beginning of this film, like, is there a ghostly presence in the house that's causing problems? Is it a human presence? Is it just bad luck? Like, you're not really sure, which is kind of neat. But I do think there's a little bit of a horror slant to this. Never gets scary because it's primarily a comedy, but it's there. Now, outside of the strong lead cast, you will recognize or may recognize a few other Korean actors who pop in and out when they play customers who show up to stay at this lodge, so look out for that. And that's really all that there is to say about this. I mean, I strongly recommend A Quiet Family if you haven't seen it. It's currently available on Amazon Prime, and you may still be able to pick up a physical copy at a reasonable price. It's difficult for me to choose between this and the remake, the Miike film, Happiness of the Katakuris, because they're so different from one another. They actually make a pretty nice double feature, and you could compare them and decide which one that you prefer. But I don't know if I could really decide. I remember back in the day when I first watched them, I preferred the remake, the Miike film. Maybe because it was a little bit more outlandish. But as I've rewatched these films over time, that gap is evened up. I like both of these just about the same. So check them both out one night. And as always, I will see you next time.